friends and enemies. Welcome to another edition of the mighty CBP part of the CBP Media Network. And today we'll be talking about Bitcoin mining, home mining, if that's your thing. And a lot of people seem to be interested in this. We'll be able to hopefully answer a lot of questions, scratch a few itches you may have to do with that. But before we go any further into that particular topic, I want to scratch off one of the things I got to do. And that's we have some ad reads. And I got to talk about number one is EasyDNS. They sponsor our show. They've been sponsoring our show for quite a while because we like the product services that they provide us. And for domain purchases and for renewals, they have you covered. Or if you already have a domain and you want to get it renewed, they could help you out. For web hosting, starting one up, or if you have one existing, again, they could help you out. Starting up from the ground up is pretty difficult. And we had that problem with us, but we were able to get a helping hand. They guided us through the whole process. The people at EasyDNS, Mark and his team, showed us the process and we now have our own website, CanadianBitcoiners.com. And it could never have been done without the help of the people of EasyDNS. They offer their service with protection in mind. Right now, there's a big thing going on with phishing of websites. And EasyDNS, look, this is the stuff they provide for you. They have domain share, which they provide some detection in real time. If there's some website out there that is a lookalike domain to yours, they can intercept that and they can put the nail to the cross for these guys and stop this from making life difficult for you. That's the type of service these guys provide out there. When you're using EasyDNS, you're in good hands with them. So email migration, setting up email, lots of different things you could do. They are one of the oldest and most established providers in this space. Why is that the case? Why have they been here for so long? It's because they provide really good service. A lot of other companies, similar companies, have come and gone. They got bought up, gobbled up, or went belly up or tits up, whatever you want to call it. These guys haven't. And there's a reason why. They have reliable, no downtime. You could pay with Bitcoin. And if you do happen to sign up and use our promo code CBP Media, 50% will be taken off your initial purchase. Check them out. Second sponsor, we have Bull Bitcoin. Again, I have no idea what the price of Bitcoin is. I haven't looked at it for well over a week, but whatever it is, it's either a good time to buy and or sell. Could be both, I don't know, but one or the other. You have the ability to buy with Bull Bitcoin and sell if you want with Bull Bitcoin. When fees are high, you could use Lightning to do your buys or sells through Bull Bitcoin, or you could use on-chain when fees are low. I always recommend people use on-chain, but learn options out there like Lightning, because there will be a point in time in the future where fees are not going to be cheap and you're going to be kicking yourself if you haven't consolidated your transactions, everything. But that's a topic for another time. Talk about Bull Bitcoin. Bull Bitcoin, again, things that you could do with them. You could pay your bills. Like if you've been buying Bitcoin for years, where I know some people have done that. You have a large stack of Bitcoin. You want to start spending it. You just want to, don't want to hoard it forever. Well, you can start spending that to pay your bills, and Bull Bitcoin enables you to do that. You can facilitate that to pay your electricity bill. You have to pay your hydro, but whatever the heck it is, you're good to go. They also give you the ability to buy gift cards. With those gift cards, you could then spend your Bitcoin to get those gift cards and spend those gift cards in the real world. You're kind of living on a Bitcoin standard. It's really cool stuff. Check them out. They even just expanded into France. Their global domination is coming up for Bull Bitcoin. Check them out. Use our promo code. If you do open up an account, $21 will be added to your account. No questions asked after you provided necessary information, of course. The last sponsor we have, well, I'm going to bring in Jonathan from DCentral Tech. How are you, buddy?
Hey, doing good. Hope everybody watching is doing fine as well.
You're going to get a ton of questions, I'm pretty sure, moving forward. But I do want to do that last ad read because DCentral Technologies is sponsoring our show. And I think there's nobody better that could do this ad read than you, Jonathan. So I'm going to pass it over to you. Maybe you could talk about some of the services and products you offer at DCentral Technologies.
Yeah, so essentially, DCentral aims to be the ultimate and best expertise center for anything that touches to Bitcoin mining. We've been working with some of the industry leaders and a lot of the retail customers. We're one of the only company that actually has product and services aimed at retail customers. And we've been doing that since we've launched in 2016. So now today we're focused a lot on the open source mining products. We have a few here, for instance, the Bittrex. And I guess, Len, you'll be able to show a bit later in the show the first mockups we have for the CBP branded Bittrex. We also have another little guy here, the Nerd Axe, which is a fork of the Nerd Miner and the Bittrex. So if viewers want to see, we have essentially this guy, which is the Nerd Miner, that will go and strap on this guy, which is the Nerd Axe, and it becomes one. So it benefits from both the Betx and the Nerd Miner projects. And then we have this other guy, the fork from the Nerdax and the Bitax, which is the QX. And upcoming soon, we're waiting for the PCBs now, but we have the Nerd QX Plus, which will have 4BM1368 chips, essentially rocking about 3 terahashes for something expected like 45 to 50 watts. So it's a very good home device to have. It's good either for pool or solo mining. And so, yeah, that's essentially what we do. We do a lot more stuff, but anything that touches to Bitcoin mining, we're just, enthusiasts.
You do offer a lot of product over there, and you touched on it. We'll talk about it later in the show for people that are interested. The CBP branded Bittrex. There are some dynamite photos I could share with people that are watching the stream. And for people who are not, they're listening in. What are you doing? You have to watch a show live. That's the way to do things. But so you touched on a few products, and I want to go deep on them, like the Nerd Axe, the Nerd Miner itself. It's very it's interesting. You could get into it. You could learn about mining, but in terms of the amount of hash rate, it's meager. But somehow you're able to mate that with a Bittrex. What's the process here, and what sort of output are you getting from a Nerd Axe?
Yeah, so the Nerd Axe essentially is the same as a Bittrex. So right now, the version that's been made is the Ultra version. So this one is rocking the S19 XP or S19K Pro chip. So you can expect something about 500 gigahash from the one ASIC that's running there. So the Nerd Miner becomes the brain of the device, a bit like this ESP32 chip would be on your Bittrex. So it's essentially just merging the two projects together and upgrading to 9 million times more powerful hashing, because obviously ASICs are much better than general purpose computing for mining.
If somebody has a Nerd Axe, could they simply order the parts from you to merge them together? Is that possible? And you provide instructions as well?
Yeah, so we have the Nerd Axe as an expansion board. So if you take your Nerd Miner, you'll be able to plug it in the expansion board without having to buy another screen. So that was our idea. And when we looked, for instance, at Public Pool, which is a big pool for the Nerd Miners, there's about 53K Nerd Miners connected right now and hashing. And you can see it's a bit ridiculous. It's giving 3.8 gigahashes. So just one Nerd Axe is 250 times more powerful than that. But the point still is that there are 53,000 Nerd Miner that are connected, and I think it's coming a lot from the novelty of the screen and the information that's being shared. It can be used a bit like the block clock you have right there behind you. And so I think that now that we have projects like the Nerd Axe, the Nerd QX Plus, and stuff like that will use the same screen, same UI, and the same information displaying that can kind of touch on the clock thing. I think there will be much more migration to those products from the Nerd Miners.
We're trying to get people to start mining at home. It's a big thing. It's easy to do. It's not intrusive. You just have to shell out some money to do it. But for people that are scared about their energy bills shooting up or the amount of noise that is being generated from one of these smaller miners, really, I could put this to rest. These things don't tend to use up a lot of electricity. They don't tend to generate a lot of heat, and they don't tend to generate a lot of noise. So you can plug this in just about anywhere, and even right next to your bedroom, next to your bed if you want. You can still sleep like a baby. Check it out, d-central.tech. That's the website for people that are curious. Another thing, though, Jonathan, I want to talk about, Pi Axe. I have many Raspberry Pis. What the heck is a Pi Axe?
So I don't have the board with me, but I can go and grab one. We actually have some. The Pi Axe is essentially a mining hat. So it's the same logic where you have the Bittrex with this one ASIC chip, but instead of being run and operated by the brain, the ESP32 chip here, it's sit on top of your Raspberry Pi. So I have one lying just there. And so you have those pinouts right there that you'll just go and sit the Pi Axe on. And so the idea is to have a full, not just archival node, but also mining node. And so the idea is that it becomes some form of enforcement node. Obviously, the verification part of nodes is not diminished there, but having the full power with the mining that's backing it, I think is something that's very, to me, is very seductive and comes closer to the original vision.
Is there any particular Raspberry Pi you recommend, or could even like a Raspberry Pi 3 or 3B run it? Do you
Well,
have to have a 4 or 5?
since you're running the node, you'll have the same limitation than running your Raspberry Pi with a node. And I believe, well, right now I have the 5, but I believe even with the 4, it's starting to get a bit longer to make the block verification when you're downloading the full chain. And so obviously there is that limitation with Raspberry Pi. So it would be even nicer to have some other device where we can attach those. And there are a few. So for instance, we've been looking into so the QX. The way I see it is this guy here. It's also connecting right now to a Raspberry Pi, but we're thinking of using the USB instead and making it like a expansion board, mining expansion board, where you could connect to your different node solutions, so the my nodes and the umbrels and all that stuff, or you could be running your own pool on top of your node and then just connect your mining expansion board. So there's a few avenues right there that can be explored in that direction.
In terms of volume right now, do you notice that more people are interested in stuff like the Bittrex? I see so many posts these days, and a lot of people are
Yeah.
interested in buying it. A lot of people are running it. You must be noticing an increase in terms of people wanting it and talking to you about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So and since that Bitx blog, to be honest, it's been really like the summer, like, and we'll touch a bit on that because it's something also I want to share. I guess some insights and some background stuff that we don't normally share. We always are very proud and bump the chest a bit. But running a business is also very hard. And so, for instance, summer was really really harsh. Like e-commerce traditionally goes down, but this one was very very hard on us. And that Bitx block actually just like ended summer right away. And since then, yes, sales has been doing good on the Bitx. There's also more competition, so there's more and more manufacturers and distributors out there. So obviously, it's not all coming to us. And Europe, I think, is a really big user base for Bitx. So when we started, we used to ship a lot in Europe. We can see this diminishing a bit as more distributors in Europe are coming out. So it makes a lot of sense, and makes sense also for Europe to be very interested because they have those prohibitive energy rates. So for them, considering something like the Antminer Slim or even the space heaters that we offer is not necessarily, not in all contexts, because in some contexts yes, but not in all contexts as profitable or as good of a decision than us here in Canada.
Can we make a Christine Lagarde branded Bittrex for the people in Europe? I'm sure the people over there would absolutely love to have that. Just stick it to her. Because she's been obviously very vocal against Bitcoin, and to have
Yeah,
something like that'd be awesome. I think we should set something up for our European friends. Wonder if
yeah,
that's a
maybe,
possibility.
maybe.
The space heaters. This is something that's going to be big moving forward, especially as we transition in this part of the country, in Northeast, in fact, even in the United States as well. It gets kind of cold in the winter, and people, they need solutions in order to heat their home. So these space heaters that you offer, I see there's the S9, there's S17, there's a bunch of different flavors. Maybe you could talk about these, because for somebody that does have the ability to power or heat their home with electricity, this is a good option for them. So maybe you could give some background what this is all about.
Yeah. So even when we started, even with our first S9, and that's back in 2016, we used to run one, and it was super loud and would surely annoy a lot of people. But we didn't mind too much back then, I guess. And we used to eat even with that one Antminer S9 in our apartment. But there was also, like, we tried to bring the message out there, but like people would resist a lot to it. And it's only until when I saw the first, the 3D printed box by CryptoCloaks, the S9 printed box. When I saw that box, I understood that it could, like, it's just visually appealing. It's fitting, the narrative of a space heater, and it becomes, I don't know why, but it becomes more understandable for people when it's in this format. And so I asked if we could have the ability to distribute them, and he's approved. and instantly people like they understood right away. And so from that we sponsored the 17 series space heater box from Crypto Cloaks, which is designed, and we started distributing those, and it was like a really successful product last year. Last winter I believe we sold north of 100 of the 17 series space heaters. And now this winter, even with the Alving, the 19 series are super cheap right now. So I think like we're selling essentially 19 series for the price we were selling 17 series last winter. So I mean, to me, it's definitely a bargain. I don't expect those prices to stay if things move, and obviously we don't have a crystal ball there, but we can expect some movement. And also I think a lot of Canadians are being squeezed by inflation, and they're looking for, it's either cut the heating right now, or maybe you could take the chance on double monetization, where you're stacking a few sats and your heat, and so you don't have to cut on the heating bill, but you also get some kind of money back on your heating bill. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, so the 19 series is the latest one that we'll be pushing. What we do with those, the objective is mostly to recycle ASICs and to have like affordable heaters, because obviously you don't want to pay 4 or 5K on a heater. That said, if somebody wants to have the best efficiency at home, we also have the low key edition, Antminer low key edition, and our Antminer slim edition, which are two other solutions that we've designed for home mining, and they're more like for the like brutal mining in mind, but they still have the options for silent fans.
So when you get one of these miners, say like an S19, for instance, and you start cannibalizing it and taking the chips off it, I think I recall the S9 had something like 60 something chips. I can't remember the exact number in there. So I
53.
would imagine the S19s and S21s would have a similar amount, some 60 something. I'm guessing, maybe I'm wrong, but it would have a lot of chips on it. But you're only using a few per device. So where do you get the boards? Like there seems to be like a shortage of boards to power them, right?
So in the space heaters, the idea is really to lower the cost as much as possible. So we just recycle ash boards, or a bunch of ash boards. For instance, the 17 series has its 3 ash boards inside it, inside the shell. And the 19 series will have 2 ash boards in them, but we don't remove the chips for those products. We'll remove the chips for the Bittrex. Now,
Uh-huh.
the shortage, it's not a problem for us, because, like I've mentioned, we did work with a few of those big mining farms in the past, doing mostly repairs. Repairs has not done so good lately, so we're not focused too much on that. But we still can access some of the older generation as they try to move on to the newer generations, and sometimes we can even get some deals if we are able to get some broken hardware that we can fix ourselves. We'll get even better margins by fixing it ourselves. So that's one way we can source machines, which will then transform into parts, or again parts into machines, depending on what's the exact objective.
So I'm looking right now at the S19 Silent Heater Edition. There's
Yeah,
three different versions I see that's being sold. There's the S19, S19J Pro, and S19K Pro.
yeah,
And so the order was that I mentioned was from the least um, does the least hash rate to the most, and you're talking between 44 for the terahash per second to up to 56 terahash per second for the best one that I mentioned. So in terms of like the noise for one of these, I'm curious, maybe you could describe somebody, because I'm sure somebody may want to put one of
yeah.
these in their room. What type of noise are they kind of expecting from one of these units? Also, how warm, like, do you have any stats for how much, like what type of temperature is coming out of the fan from these things?
Yeah. So for the noise level, you can expect something between 45 decibels to 55 decibels. Normally, it will be more in the 50 to 55 decibels. But there are like a few settings. If you downclock a bit the machine, stuff like that, you can go and reach 45 decibels. And that's comparable, to an normal AC unit you run at home or in an apartment, or a convector unit which does heating as well. So it's the noise is really comparable. Actually, I found that the noise would be us here. We had this convector unit in the lobby, and we put some space heater there as a demonstration for people that comes as foot traffic. And I would notice that the convect air from the building would make more noise than our space heater. So it's not that not that bad, but obviously it's not nothing that you would necessarily want to sleep just next to, right? So that's that. Now for the what was your second
The
question though?
heat, the amount
The
of heat that comes.
so it's 99.99% of the computing is turned into waste, and that is essentially the heat, because it's the conservation of energy. Nothing is lost, nothing is found. It's just transformed. And so when you're doing computing, those 1,000 watts are not lost, or actually they are lost, but into heat. And so it means that resistive heating achieves just the exact same heat output per watt. And so that means that, for instance, you have normally I think we call them still space heaters, the things that you have on your down your wall. And so those will normally be anything between 800 watts to 1,200 watts. Obviously, they don't necessarily run all time. While you're a
Mhm,
miner, you might want to run it all time. So
mhm.
depending on the exact area you're trying to cover, you might want to have some timers, or we're working on a few thermostat solutions. There's actually an integration with Brains OS that you can use that will it will connect to, I'm trying to remember, Home Assistant.
So
So
that
there,
way you're able to, so you can
yeah,
count a smart version of it, right? That's pretty
yeah,
cool.
yeah. It's still just a on-off switch. What we'd like to see, and maybe we'll have to work on it, is to have some thermostat where you can tweak, the auto tuning profile, so it reaches like less heat when you have enough, or more heat when it's starting to get colder, instead of just having a on-off switch. But yeah, for now the on-off switch is definitely possible.
That's all. You know where it would be amazing to have such a device would be actually inside the ducting, because for people that have forced air, and like I have one forced air cooling and heating for my house. If I can shove one of those units inside the ducts, then as you know, the demand, it's like we need more heat and there's demand for it, and they could ramp that up. Then that heat would then just be cycled through the whole system. That's really cool that you're able to tap into the smart thermostats, so to speak,
Yeah.
and you could take advantage of it. There's a huge industry here that you could take advantage of, especially as we start to get into the cold weather. Man, you can make a you'll be busy for a long time, Jonathan. I'm sorry to say, or I'm happy to say.
Yeah, well, that's what we want. And touching on the central units, our Antminer Slim also has a Cloudline version, so you can just like attach a Cloudline directly to the Antminer Slim and plug that into your central units. So it's already all set and ready for it.
And that too is also quiet to slim. Is that a quiet model
Oh
that
yeah,
is
yeah.
not?
The Slim is the same noise level. It never gets really much better than that, but you can have it with the Cloudline. And the Cloudline, which is what's nice, is if it's connected to your duct, it will make less noise because that noise is being channeled into your duct.
Yes. So people out there that they have forced air heating and cooling, check this out. There's options available for you.
100.
Trip Aces is asking a question, and this is going to put you in a spot. I don't know if you can answer this question right away, because he says, how much investment to mine one Bitcoin over time? I'm assuming he's talking about in a pool rather than doing solo mining. So how much terahash do you need in order to accumulate, say, one Bitcoin in maybe a year's time or a month's time? Do you have any idea? Like, it's a significant amount you need.
Right now, I don't have an idea. It's definitely I'm put on the spot. But what I would say is already there's a lot of disagreement into calculating that, because right, you like, do you account for all the capital that you'll need into the OPEX and the CAPEX, so the units and the operational expenses with electricity? And if you do it in, say, for instance, is the idea to do it in 1 week, in 1 day, it will change the expectations. So it will change how much you need to invest in order to achieve that one Bitcoin, because there's like one Bitcoin can be achieved maybe on 10 years. It's going to be a different picture than if it's achieved in a month.
You need a heck. Just think about it, if it's cost right now. Look, $58,000 US per Bitcoin. You think of the amount of equipment you have to purchase in order to mine that. And you're right. The time frame in which you want to mine that one Bitcoin, it changes the whole variable. I'll say the whole equation as well. Plus, hash rate is going up all the time. Do you want to talk about the network hash rate? I mean, the last time I looked, we surpassed 700 exahash per second. Man, you guys are selling a lot of bid access to make this happen. Like, what's going on there? You want to make any comments about the hash rate that we're seeing?
Yeah, well, for me, it's always been hash rate. Not like hash rate will always go up, and one of the reasons is obviously the gains in efficiency, which have been very impressive. I myself was doubting that it would still have so much of a gap in increase, but you can see with the latest models, we're now nearing 15 watts per terahash. I mean, I didn't expect to see that figure anytime soon 2 years ago. So definitely, we're still being surprised there. But that said, even without the increase in efficiency, I believe that especially what we're doing, for instance, with space heaters, but also anything that touches to what I call dual purpose mining. So it's essentially where the output of the mining or the input in some cases is being used as a another way to monetize an activity. So, for instance, you have those oil fields, those private wells, and all that stuff that might have excess energy, or they might have some like what they would turn into flare gas that can be monetized. But normally, the issue with that is it's going to cost more to transport than to monetize it, especially since most of it is going to be like dirty energy. For instance, the flare gas. So it needs more filtering, more investment. But miners, they want to have a cheap energy per unit, and they can come to those sites and gobble up all that excess energy. So I think there's stuff going that direction. Also, even renewables, the efficiency on solar panels has been increasing insanely. I mean, it's becoming a real consideration. And it's a way for you to, in my opinion, it's a way to subsidize your investment in renewables, because you can monetize, you can make a plan and have a return over investment over your panels much faster than, for instance, reselling to the grid any excess you have, which you will have.
Could you imagine? Like, I'm just thinking about, and we talk about it all the time, all this wasted energy from the oil fields, say in the Middle East, where it's just impossible to monetize that stuff. There's a tremendous amount of potential there, earning potential, just simply through Bitcoin miners. And rather than flaring it, which obviously does bad for the environment, combusting it seems to have, in the long run, that's going to be much better. But man, oh man, I just want to bring a question that's been posed in the chat here. Brian asks, can you explain pools versus solo mining? What are some of the better pools? Maybe you could give some insight into this question.
Yeah, I always separate it in three. I think it's unusual, but I say there's the solo mining, which is really mining on your own node, and that means that you are in control of the block template creation. Then I'll say that you have the solo pools. So these are services like CK Solo Pool, services like Public Pool, where you get the mining reward as a solo miner. You get all the mining reward, but you still outsource to that node the responsibility of block creation of the block template. And then you have pooled mining, where essentially, if you see solo mining as a lottery, well, it's just the same as buying a lotto ticket in pool. And so those pools, unfortunately, in Bitcoin world, they're a bit bigger than the normal lotto pools. And so you'll have some pools with, for instance, 20 to 25% of the network. Some of them might even have some shared block templates. And so that's a complex thing to maybe go all over right now. But what's to keep in mind is you have those pools essentially that will group people together, and obviously it will create more recurrence into and more expectations into Bitcoin revenue, and this will allow for more stable income, which institutional miners especially will favor, because they need those revenues to be recurring and yeah, that's
Do you have any
essentially
preference? Which are some of the better pools? Like, do you have any ideas or any suggestions you want to provide?
Yeah, so me personally, I've always been very happy with Brains. They like I remember even back in 2018 where they would allow us to choose, which version we would want to run with UASF core. I think there was whatever before it was Bitcoin Cash. I think it was Bitcoin Infinity or something like that. So although or Ultimate, I don't remember the client that they were running back then. But anyways, Brains, I've really liked over time, and we've worked a lot with them. We've worked a lot with Brains OS. What I dislike a bit more lately is they seem to have those block templates that are matching Endpool, and so and their answers are a bit foggy, where they were saying, well, you know, hash rate is a commodity now, and so you have to evolve in order to stay alive, right? And so we can understand
Yeah.
that argument, but yeah, so it's a bit foggy to say the least. And now there's Ocean that's becoming, I think, a viable alternative, and they're getting more and more blocks. So even for revenue recurrence, I think it's becoming a better option for people. And they've also, like Brains, they've also made Lightning payouts available, so you can now get paid essentially every time there's a block on Ocean or daily on Brains through the Lightning network, and avoid on-chain fees.
And that's a new feature that came out just in the past year. I mean, I think in the past 6 months, and I really like that for people that are mining, is they
Yeah.
don't have to wait for achieving a certain threshold. They can just get paid on a daily, and it's on a cheap too, because it's, Lightning is fast, quick, and easy to use. In terms of solo mining, not doing your own, where you're doing your own block creation, but outsourcing it to a solar miner and having them do it. And if you happen to land a block, you're going to give them a slice of the pie. Is public pool your favorite one, the one you recommend the most, or is another one you want to recommend?
Definitely, we have a sweet spot for public pool because it's the center of the open source mining. Although I'll always also mention CK pool because it's the one that's been standing, through the test of time, and so that's also worth a mention in my mind.
And another question we have from Mark Mick. He says, as a noob, to get his toe wet, the 155 to 255 Bittrex is an all-in-one starter kit.
Yeah, so I'm guessing those are maybe US prices. I'm not sure. But that said, the Bittrex, you have different versions. So when you go to that page, this is why you have that price range. So you have the Bittrex Max, which is the one with the 1397 chip. This one is 17 series comparable. You'll get about 400 gigahashes out of that unit. The Bittrex Ultra, this one is using the S19 XP and S19K Pro chips. It's the BM1366, and it will do about 500 to 550 gigahashes. Then you have the Bittrex Supra, which is the BM1368. This one is from the S21. And the efficiency is going to be, well, stock settings, it should be about 650 gigahashes. But when you have some of our coolers, you can easily go up to even 900 gigahash with the Argon Tower cooler, for instance. Maybe 750 with the Ice Cooler Tower. So that's nice, and you keep very, very good temperature on your chip. And there's the latest one. There's the Bitx Gamma, which we're actually waiting maybe this week for the last parts so we can finally assemble our first units and start shipping. Because as we've planned for mid-September for shipping the Bitx Gamma, but actually it might start shipping out a bit earlier, so that's cool. And this is the one that's running on the S21 Pro chip. We're expecting about 1.2 to 1.4 terahash out of that
Wow.
unit, and that's with the stock fan. So it might even touch. I don't want to speculate too much, but it might even touch the 2 terahash mark with the Argon cooler tower. Um, and yes, you have those other iterations, but that's for this, like the simple one chip Bittrex. Those are the 4 different iterations, and you have those coolers that you can choose during a checkout. So it's an all-in-one starter kit. You choose the power supply depending on your geography, and I think that's pretty much it.
Is there ever going to be a hex version of using the S21 version chips?
So it's something that's in the work, but my understanding and my understanding is still limited on some of those stuff because it's very complicated. We are very blessed to have insanely talented people working and giving some of their time into making this happen, and so super grateful to Scott that's initiated all of this, Open Source Miners United and every of their members, Thomas that's been working on the QX, One Clue that's been working on the firmware, and obviously I'm missing a lot of very important people that helped throughout the project. But yeah, the Bitx X, what I understand, the 1368 version is going to require some time. So I don't I don't necessarily expect a version that's going to be commercial before Christmas. What I do think is the Nerd QX Plus has been confirmed as stable. We still are to test it ourselves, but the Nerd QX Plus, yeah, I definitely think we'll have it for Christmas season.
Could you talk a little bit about the Nerd QX Plus? Give some idea what's this all about for people that are
Yeah,
wondering.
so essentially, it's the QX you have here, which is a four chip miner, and it's gonna look essentially just the same, right? So you have this
Hmm.
big fan there. You think that's sitting on four chips. You can see a bit of the circuit under there, and the Nerd QX Plus is essentially going to have that NerdX screen right there, and have that same nice UI that you're familiar with the NerdMiner. But it's going to become the brain of that big guy controlling the four chips. And since it's going to be using 1368 chips, we can expect 3 terashes, maybe a bit more with proper cooling.
That is so cool. Now, in terms of reliability of these chips, the S9 is legendary, but this thing is now 9 years old. It's long in its tooth. S17 has been around for long enough. We know what it's all about. The S19 as well, it's been around for quite a few years, but the S21 is still relatively new. Could you talk about the new S21, the BM1370 chips, and maybe even the BM1368 chips? In terms of reliability, longevity, do they handle like heat well? Do they handle a warm ambient temperature well? Like compare this to previous chips. Are they well made? Are they built? Will they stand up to the test of time, you think?
I think so, but they all have their weakness. They all have their flaw. They are very heat sensitive, and they can actually crack quite easily if there is an impact, which wasn't the case with S9s. You could almost throw them down the stairs and they would still work. The S17 obviously not. They had this flaw where the heat sinks, because they were attached soldered to the chip, it would crack all the chip instead of just sticking. So they were like very fragile to shock. But if you had good batches that didn't have that delamination issue, which is something else on the 17 series, they're actually very reliable chips and machines. But the 19 series, the PCB's version, because you have two versions, you have like two eras. You have the PCB, and then it became aluminum ashboard. The PCB, they have the same weakness, and it's always the temperature sensors, and it's mostly in. So it's not nothing that I fear in home environment, but most miners, for instance, I'm talking about the one located in Texas, there is going to be a lot of corrosion, because we actually think it's dry there, but it's pretty wet, and you have also like dust in the air, and so it's essentially sandblasting the temperature sensors that are located at the intake of the machine, and just the boards will stop working as soon as those temperature sensors are out, and it's quite a mess to fix, but it's doable. So they have those weakness, but the chips, they are super reliable. They can't underclock too much though. So the 19 series, like the S19 that's the BM 1398, this one, and you also have the J Pro, which is the 1362 actually, for the J Pro. So those two, the PCB version, the chips super reliable. Then they got to the aluminum version, and the chips became a bit thinner, and so the overall ashboard we feel is more reliable, and the construction of it, and it would handle shock well. But if there's too much heat, first the chips are going to be a bit less. They resist less, so they'll be less stable as soon as there's too much heat. While the other ashboards, they could like go well over the recommended temperatures and still be able to produce some ash. And also, if the shock happens at the wrong place, it's a bit like a screen. It's a bit hit or miss, so the chip might just like completely crack. And so they're more fragile in that sense. And even for extraction, so for us, when we started the extraction from the aluminum boards, especially the S19 XP and S21 chips, because they became even more fragile, like just a little bending in the dashboard would crack the chip. So it's
Ah,
a very delicate operation.
do you have any experience with any of the competition, like say like the What's Miner or anything along those lines? And what are your thoughts on any of those other type of chips that are being offered by those companies?
Yeah, so the chips they look super reliable. We almost never fix What's miners because they're so reliable. The Since the What's miner M50, we've been seeing a bit more issues with the units, but MicroBT has been very good on honoring their warranties for what I know. And there's one through Bitfarms warranty center right there in Quebec. We've done a few Canon, so we've fixed a few Canons, but they're also a very reliable unit overall. And the chips, they're all looking very reliable. One of the issues for us, let's say that we want to work on it as an open source project, is
Mhm.
the protocol that's being used to communicate with the chip is encrypted, while the one with the Antminer is not, and so it complicates things a lot into trying to reverse engineering the communication.
So that's why you're not offering anything from Canon or anything from What's Miners because of the encryption that's preventing you from getting access. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought it was something else, but is do you think there's any hope that we're going to see something that's going to be any groundbreaking? Are people working at it? I'm not trying to get at, or is it kind of just something people don't even care about for the most part? We're just dealing
Yeah,
with it.
yeah. Definitely some people working on it because I've been asked sometimes to provide, because I did some on some live streams on our YouTube. I did some ashboard sniffing and miner sniffing. And
Uh-huh.
so what I did also is a few private sessions for a few members of Open Source Miners United. Since we have access to most of that hardware, we actually provided a few captures that they've requested. So I know some people are trying some stuff. And I always say that people at Open Source Miners United, they're mining hackers essentially. So yes, there is hope that it will happen in my mind, but definitely like not nothing from us, right? It's we're too we're definitely over our it's over us. Yeah,
Well, you're helping out as best you can. You're providing the
yeah,
sniffing data. And this is going to be, I guess, one really strange question. Block, I think, has been working on a Bitcoin miner. Have you heard about that? Have you even got your hands in it that you could talk about? And some people were signing those NDAs, those non. You can't talk about them, right? Like,
yeah.
so no, I don't know if you're subjected to this as well, but do you have any feedback you give on those units?
Well,
Have you come across them?
in a sense, I'm fortunate that I don't have an NDA, but in another sense, I guess not. But what I know is that they're very, very open into sharing those ASICs and even distributing those ASICs to people like us for manufacturing our own, custom rigs. And I know a few key, players might have their hands on some of that stuff, and they'll be able to work and act for us to have open source hardware going in that direction.
I hope that they could put something out that's competitive. It'd be awesome to have something different, another player in a game, and one that has stronger ties to Western nations, like in this case, it'd be United States. And if they could have everything done, the R&D done on United States soil, and they could even have the production done. This might be too hard of an uphill battle, but it'd be awesome if that could be done in the United States soil as well. Just
Yeah.
because if we could centralize it in that respect, I know we want to be decentralized, but at least we could take it away from China in one respect. But um, I guess it's a good time to transition to the last topic, and this is the CBP branded Bittrex. And here are some pictures we have for people that are asking about it. This is just hot off the press. And so these are some, I got them just today. And for people that are looking at it, you can see there's right here, it has our logo, the Canadian Bitcoiners Podcaster logo. And you can see on the back, if I could zoom in, let me just see if I could get closer to this. Yes, friends and enemies. There we go,
So
ladies and gentlemen. Look at that. Tell us about this. Like, when are people going to be expecting this in their hands if they place an order? I understand only 75 are going to be in existence, but maybe you could talk a little bit more about this.
yeah, so first of all, I would invite anybody that has feedback if you want to make a final call on it. It's now is the time. It's not final. We haven't sent this to be printed yet, so definitely give us some feedback. You can shout out on the Discord. I've joined your Discord, so don't hesitate to go there. You can come and up on DCentral's Discord as well, or simply at us on X or even on Noster. and we'll take your feedback. That said, obviously the idea was to go and have your colors, have your logo there, have your catchphrase, friends and enemies, and so this is going to be on the Bittrex Gamma version. So we're expecting, like I've said previously, about 1.2 terashes to 1.4 terashes from this unit. The exact wattage is supposed to be something like 15 watts per terash, like I've mentioned, the exact edge of the efficiency, the most efficient you can get your hands on. And this is the first one ASIC, first solo miner that you'll have over 1 terash. When you can expect it. So yes, there's going to be a limited quantity of 75. Where we think we'll be able to launch the pre-sale anytime this week, and so we expect something like 2 weeks for us to receive everything we need, and then we get on building and shipping. So this, it can be anything between 2 to 4 weeks depending on how busy we are.
So it's possible shipping could start taking place beginning of October. That's reasonable.
Yeah, it's reasonable.
Wow, that's incredible. So for people that are wondering, this is the S21 Pro chip. Like as he mentioned, this is the cutting edge in terms of efficiency. You'll be able to like the single bit axe is going to be over 1 terahash per second. Incredible, like that we are associated with that. I want to thank you for doing this. 75. It looks like. Oh, I just want to say that Brian just pre-ordered the Gamma bit axe from DCentral. So yeah, thank you very much for that. But we have the Canadian Bitcoiners podcast version. Check that one out too. That's so cool. Looking forward to seeing this go on pre-sale. So when it does, let us know. We're going to pump out this as soon as possible. The price, off the top of your head, do you know what it's going to cost?
I believe it's 285 all in with the power supply, but I would have to review. Honestly, I don't even remember exactly.
Right. So
What I
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so I wanted to propose maybe something special to the viewers. It's not something I do often, but I think every time I come on the show, I'd like to share a little something. So one first thing I'd like to show maybe is where the Bittrex are being created. So I'll just move to that area and we can just show you a bit where the magic happens.
You know what? I'm going to see if I could hide myself, because then if I could do that,
I'll just
I
turn off
can't do
my
that.
camera for 2 seconds.
No problem. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to get a tour of DCentral Technologies to see what's going on behind the scenes. For people that are unaware, the operation there is quite large. We've got a quote-unquote virtual tour in the past. I've gotten 2. Joey's only gotten 1, so I'm twice as good as he is in terms of this respect. Either way, they got a massive complex over there. Like, it's much bigger than what I was expecting. And yeah, I'm going to pass it over back to Jonathan.
Yeah, so we won't visit the whole facility now, but I just wanted to show a bit where the magic happens. So for instance, here is where we will fix your power supplies and do some of your dashboard repairs. This station, and obviously we're quite messy, but we're efficient in our mess, so don't worry about that. So this is where more dashboard repairs happen, but also where some Bittrex are being built. And you can see right here more, and we actually can see a few boxes of us building the Bittrex right there. So, and we have one of our technicians working on it there. So more stations. So all of this is essentially where the magic happens, where all the Bittrex are being done, all our stacks of stands and I'd say converters, and so all that stuff we're doing here here in Canada. So we're pretty proud about it. We think it's quite a large operation, like you've mentioned, a large facility as well. We'll maybe see and visit a few of the other areas in future sessions.
Located in Montreal, for people that are wondering, and maybe one day you should pay for tours. You could have people pay and you could give them a guided tour of the facilities. That could be a new revenue stream for you. I guess one strange question at the end I have, when you do recycle some of these units, say like an S19 or an S21, those metal, I think are they aluminum, like the housing, what do you do with them at the end? Like, are they just recycled? Or are they just scrap?
Yeah. So I could actually show you. We're actually building pallets right now that are going for recycling. So some of the shells, for instance, right now the S19 shells will keep because we're doing the low key edition, which is using actually reusing those aluminum shells. But the 17 series, for instance, right now we're just removing everything that's working. So the hash boards, the control boards, stuff like that. We're actually now focusing on having, except for the S17, which we think is still a reliable and good option and cheap option. But all the other 17 series, we've actually removed the mining hardware, and you can now only buy the parts. So we're stripping all the parts, getting stuff that you can keep your machine running, but we're getting rid of the aluminum shells, all that stuff, and sending to recycling. And it's some touching on the recycling. We'd like to extend that to retail miners where they don't necessarily know how to dispose, and they won't necessarily have an incentive into disposing of their miners once they're dead. But what we're thinking is finding an appropriate ratio where, for instance, you can have a for instance, with the S9 miner, you can have a 6-to-1 ratio, maybe, where you send 6 dead units, will ship you 1 working. So something like
Ah,
that gives you an incentive, yeah, to recycle your old stuff that's not working, and maybe you get something out of it still, because we're actually able to extract a lot of value from every little things that we can put our hands on. So whatever we need to do, we'll recycle the aluminum, we'll keep the fans for another project, we'll use the control board for another, maybe flash it for another version or whatever, or just do simple repairs. Sometimes it's not the whole unit that's going to be faulty. So the one scavenge part from this one and this one and this one, and you have a Frankenstein miner that's working. So that's something we're looking into offering.
nothing goes to waste. That's an awesome way to do things, and I love it. Any last words before we sign off? I want to thank you for the tour of the where the magic all happens. But any last words before we sign off? Anything you want to say just before we cut it quits?
No, that's it. I think we've already touched on a lot of what we're doing, especially lately. We've been focusing a lot on those open source mining hardware. We're focusing a lot also on our own versions. If you've been following on X, you might have seen that we've bought quite a large army of printers. We're actually very busy deploying that also right now. It's
3D printers, that is.
Yes, and that is in preparation, especially for the Bitcoin Space Eater season. Last year, I remember we actually had to cancel a few orders because at some point we were overwhelmed. So it's not something we want to do again. And obviously, our goal as a business is to even double those sales, which we believe will actually happen even organically, just by the fact that the Space Eaters are a very good product, and we think that now that more eyes and ears has been it's been reached. We definitely believe that this season, and already September, we're what 4th of September, in August already we had decent sales for Space Eaters, so we can see the wave coming.
Check it out. It's for the website d-central.tech, or if you want to check them out on Twitter, it's at DCentralTech, I believe is the
That's it. Yes.
handle. So check that out. And Jonathan, I want to thank you once again for coming on. Like always, you're always welcome back on the show. This has been awesome. And for people that are looking for the CBP branded Bittrex, looks like the pre-sale might be coming this week.
Yeah.
Only 75 are going to be ever in existence. So if you miss it, you miss it. And I'm not selling mine. So with that, take care. We'll be back on this on Monday. So take care.
Thank you.